Hi, and welcome to this episode of Armenian-American Perspective. I'm Martin Haratunyan, uh, coming to you from Boston. And today's episode is special in that we typically come to you from New York and Boston. Today, our host, Gokor Yernugyan, is in Yerevan, Armenia. And we're going to be discussing a little bit about the current situation happening there. For those of you who don't know, Gokor Yernugyan, Gokor is an activist um, in the New York Armenian community. Hi, Gokor. Welcome to Armenian-American Perspective again. And just before we start, I just want to remind all of our viewers to like and subscribe the NDA channel that we're broadcasting on here on YouTube. So just a reminder there. So Gokor, how are you?
I'm well as any Armenian can be.
Yeah. How long have you been in Yerevan now?
This was a very last minute and short trip. I arrived Wednesday morning, and I'm actually leaving tomorrow night, Tuesday night. So I've been here, I think today's my fifth day.
Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, last time you were in Yerevan was this past summer, right? When we were actually both there together.
Correct. I was there for the entire month of August, and most importantly, when the 6 month plus sit-in started at Freedom Square.
Right. So comparing this summer to the situation now, what can you tell us? What changes are you seeing?
Um, so I guess to break it down in terms of good news and bad news, the good news is that most people, whether they're NDA supporters or the common person that I meet in the street, as you know, here I have an extended family. So my brother's grandchildren's kindergarten teacher to um, people that my nieces and nephews interact with. The good news is there are more and more people, and it's noticeable almost daily, definitely between August and now, realizing that Russia is our, the thing that we've been saying for years and years, that Russia is our enemy, that Nikol is serving Russia, and at this point, even Turkey and Azerbaijan, one could say, unlike his predecessors. So they are realizing that. The bad news is the confusion, the all-around confusion. So they know what the problem is. However, the people are not focusing on the solution. And I believe it seems that the big part of it is just the mistrust that's been ingrained in us. The old, well, how do we know he's any better? Or how do we know he won't do the same? He, of course, in a generic term, he or she. So that's the best I could sum it up, Martin.
So what do you think is causing this confusion? Who or what is causing this confusion?
Well, depends on how far back we go. Especially being in Soviet Armenia, the Soviet Union has instilled mistrust in people all around. Whether you're buying a pound of apples, they want to check the scale, or whether you're electing the next prime minister. So there's just mistrust ingrained, whether it's a shot against COVID or a visit to the utilities office, signing up your kid for school, just mistrust everywhere. So that's something that's ingrained. And now, more specifically, where they're looking for, I think most Armenians agree that we need Azgain, a national or patriotic leadership. And I think for myself and for most of my friends, it's quite clear who is that Azgain force out there. In English, it doesn't translate well, but that who has Armenia's and Armenians' national interest in mind. For myself, it's the National Democratic Alliance. However, because the one thing that the KGB is absolutely good at is propaganda. We know they're not good at manufacturing, they're not good in science, they're not good in anything else. The one thing they're good in is propaganda. So they have a variety of these pseudo intellectuals that appear to be Western-minded, you know, the Chibuchans and so forth, that say, well, of course, yeah, we know that Russia is bad, it has to go, but what choice do we have but to accept the Lavrov plan? So they'll give you this mixed message, but the ultimate message is we have to accept what we get. And then most recently, on top of that, they're, instead of focusing the intention and trying to work together towards the one objective of unseating the Pashinyan regime and forming a transitional government, other I can't even say it, forces, other individuals have popped up. We know now the infamous list that's going on that has the infamous dog at top of the list, supposedly trying to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch, something that National Democratic Alliance has laid the foundation when their predecessor, the pre-parliament, had already done so over 12 years ago. For me, it's just absurd to start to do something in the midst of everything when there is already something planned. It's almost like, I mean, there's so many examples I could give. Going to someone's house at Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving Day, where they've spent the entire day preparing the stuffing and the turkey and so forth, and then just walk in with a frozen turkey and say, okay, I'm gonna start now. I know it's a far off example, but that's just what came to mind.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on the problems. I want to kind of focus more on the solutions. But you did mention something that might not be familiar to most of our American Armenian listeners. You mentioned something about a dog. So if you could kind of just elaborate what that's all about, so that
Okay,
our
yeah,
listeners know
very
who you're
quickly.
talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Very quickly, but I'll go more towards a solution because I hate to dwell on a problem.
Right.
The dog is Vartan Gukasyan, who's ex-police. Pretty much, it's well known that he's a KGB agent. He was one of the right-hand men of Vova Gasparyan, the police chief, who was responsible for crushing the Electric Yerevan movement, as well as the Sasnadzer movement in 2016. In other words, a foul-mouthed lowlife. I mean, I can't really paint any better picture of it. But he's gotten a tremendous following because Armenians, as all of us, including myself, being emotional people, he feeds into our ear what we want to hear. And the list that was comprised of supposedly people that Vartan Agopian's followers from his YouTube channel would like to see in the creation of a transitional government, he's at the #1 place right now, which is the absurdity of all absurdities. And to sum that up, the Bever members who were also nominated to be on that ridiculous list unanimously believe that, not that they wanted to not be on the list, they thought the entire process was wrong, therefore just had excused themselves. But moving
Well,
along.
there's nothing scientific about this list. It's just a poll. It's a survey. It's not even an official election or anything. So it really has no value whatsoever.
It's not even a survey or a poll, Martin John, because a survey or a poll assumes, like you said, that there's some scientific method to it, that you call or you visit or you stop 100 people in Ashtarak, and then you
Right.
stop in 100 people in Abovyan. And amongst those 100 people, there's 20 that are 18 to 25 and 30 that are 25 to 40, and half are women and half are men, so on and so forth.
All right, so you form a
Not
consensus.
just one person's followers. It's as if I ask all my buddies and I say, hey, is Goko Yelukyan a good guy? And they unanimously say, yeah. And I say, well, Goko Yelukyan is a great guy. So it's beyond not scientific, it's beyond, but not to dwell on that. The important thing,
Right. I mean, it's almost nonsensical, but
it's
anyways.
almost nonsensical. Yeah, it is nonsensical. But what we do know, again, that there is a consensus. What I said in the beginning, the good news is that people recognize that we're in a bad place. People recognize that we need to get out of this situation and how to do it. People also realize that we need a government or a leadership or some kind of a formation, whether you call it a transitional government or whatever you want to call it, that can do this. And the National Democratic Alliance, and I said it in my quick intro yesterday, if you're willing to visit their page, their website, it's ajbever.com, ajbever.com. There's an English section that has a pretty detailed list of what they're talking about. Now, I would ask all our listeners to visit the page because I think a lot of people just brush them off because they heard something. You know, there's always gossip. The one thing that I always hear is, how come one of the council members, Arapapyan, how come his kids live abroad? How is that in any way significant of what the man is doing? And instead of reading, if you read it and you say, you know, I don't like Section 3B, Part 2, it seems ridiculous, and you put up even a weak argument, I could say, okay, this person is arguing a certain point. But to brush it off on something like, I don't like Giray Sefilyan's haircut, or Arapapyan's kids are in Canada, or whatever they want to say about the council members, or they're too extremists. You know, I don't know what's extreme about protecting national interest. I don't know what's extreme about saying Artsakh is and should be an integral part of Armenia. If those ideas are extremist, then we have bigger problems than I think. And I think we tend to confuse extremist and resolute. In Armenian, Tsaira Herakan and Vajrakan. You can be resolute in your thoughts. It doesn't mean that you're an extremist. It's that you believe Ararat is Armenian. You believe Artsakh is part of Armenia. These are simple facts. So NDA has laid this out. Now it's nonsensical to start from scratch, assuming they will even start from scratch, that this hodgepodge of people are even willing to be in the same room, let alone work together, let alone have the ability to do anything. Whereas, like I said, at the minimum of 12 years, the predecessor to National Democratic Alliance, the pre-parliament, has laid this out very clearly, has laid out what a transitional government should look like. The only thing we need now is to put that into action. And in order for that to put that into action is for the current regime to be unseated.
Right. So the National Democratic Alliance, you know, a group in Armenia, has a council, and that council pretty much runs the organization. And there's the program, and the best way to get to know that program is by what you said. Visit the website, the ajbever.com, and become familiar with it. So could we kind of like go over some of those points in the program, just like bullet points, like what is the plan here?
Sure. I mean, very briefly, let me pull it up so I don't jump out of order. The initial thing, it's a 5-point plan. I mean, this is a very oversimplified,
brief summary.
A very oversimplified,
Right.
brief summary. It's now mind you, the important thing is unseating. So there's a step-by-step unseating the Pashinyan regime. And unlike what happened in 2018, when we were just merjumek Serjin, we were rejecting Serj, we're rejecting the entire infrastructure of what has been around, because we don't consider Pashinyan an individual. Pashinyan just received the baton from Serj, who received it from Koch, who received it from Levon. So it's unseating this system. And in order for that to happen, we need, so I'm sorry, I'm going back a little bit. We need men on the ground. We need people on the ground. Because there's two, if a country is in dire straits, there's two ways it can help itself. If you have a proper leadership, the proper leadership says, hey, we had a tsunami, or our neighboring country attacked us, please help us, whatever it may be. And then one of the 193 nations out there to help you. However, if you do not have a government that has its people's and its nation's interest in mind, then that job is left to the people, and the people en masse. And by en masse, I mean with an absolute minimum of 10,000 people on the streets. So then the foreign entities can say, hey, these people need our help. We need to do something. Because if we're just a few hundred or a few thousand, they're saying, well, the rest of the country doesn't seem to care. So who am I to do anything? And I'm saying that as the words of whether it's the US or France. So they're in that awkward situation, even though they've given us all the signals, even direct signals, when NDA leadership has met with officials from France, officials from the United States, many congressmen, many senators. We spoke about it last time. Even you were present, Martin, as a translator for Girard Sefilian. So they have said that they're willing, but their hands are tied if there's no acceptance from here. If your car breaks down and you need help with a flat tire, if you don't ask for that help, I can't force myself, because then I'm just an invader on your personal property, regardless of how much you need that help. So the first process is get people on the street, unseat the regime from uproot it completely. And then these are the following steps that the NDA has put in place. Formation of an anti-crisis transitional government. Because obviously, if you unseat the government, you have I believe the right word in English is anti-crisis, chiknajamain. Is there a better word for that, or?
No, that's, yeah.
Anti-crisis. So to form that.
Did you say chiknajamain or haka chiknajamain?
Well, haka chiknajamain, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anti-crisis, yeah. So to form that transitional government that can put things in place, because obviously it's not just unlike what we thought in 2018. Okay, Serge goes to the Marriott and says, I was wrong, you were right. So it's not like Pashinyan goes and says, I was right, I was wrong, Girard is right, or Boros is right, or whoever. It doesn't work that way, because there's many things that have to be changed, because as we know, the judiciary wasn't changed, the chief prosecutor wasn't changed, and so on and so forth. And he used that as a scapegoat. He's saying, well, what can I do? It's Serge's judiciary system. Well, change it. What's the purpose of having a revolution? When we had the US Revolution, we didn't leave King George's governors in place. We uprooted everything. In any government, whether you like the revolution or not. The revolution in Cuba, and again, not saying that I'm a proponent or for it or against it, but when Fidel came in, he didn't leave Batista's senators in place. He got rid of everybody.
I mean, in every revolution, whether it's the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution or the American Revolution.
That's right. The Tsarist, yeah. Well, except for our Velvet Revolution.
Well, that wasn't a revolution.
Yeah. Well. As far as the year goes. Step number one, forming that anti-crisis transitional government, which, by the way, I'm not an expert, but going by their experts, they're saying a year and a half. It shouldn't be any longer. They're a year and a half and 2 years to kind of put things into place. and in which in time you would be prepared for a proper election. Step number 2 is a political assessment of the prior regimes. So again, from Nicol back to Levon, what they have done, not just say Serge stole $1 million of kerosene or whatever he was accused of, or Kocharian owns a building that he shouldn't, or whatever. A political assessment of the corruption and the misuse of funds and the real serious stuff. And that assessment was never done when the fake revolution happened in 2018. Number 3, I'll read it and then explain it. A transitional justice system stemming from the above-mentioned political assessment of the criminal justice system, as well as a lustration of political, economic, and of foreign agents. As a ramification of the lustration, prior political parties and their leaders shall be restricted from any political activity because of their malfeasance. So this means that whether it's Dodigagos, Bargavaj, or anybody that was involved in the corruption, in the destruction of our military, in the destruction of our economy, in the destruction of our culture, of our schools, because this is what they did. That political party shall no longer be allowed to participate in any kind of public office, as well as their leaders. Now, this is important. They're specifying the party itself and their leaders. If there was a good person in those political parties that just happened to be confused or wanted a job, but they're a professional in their field, whether it's culture or sport or science or education or economics, they can go on. But the leadership and the party itself is out.
So basically those responsible for
Those responsible. Yeah, I'm just over clarifying it.
Right.
Number 4, a formation and acceptance of a new constitution based on the prior political assessment. So we know that we've already had several constitutional changes. The last one, again for our viewer, Serge Sarkisian changed it so that he can remain in power. He switched it from a presidential government to a parliamentary. And when you switch it to a parliamentary, you can become prime minister. So even though there was a 2-term limit to the presidency, after the 2-term limit of the presidency, he decided to stay on and become a prime minister, which he had vehemently denied that he would do just weeks prior to doing it. Now, one would think that this revolution, of which one of the greatest critics was Nikol Pashinyan, when he was pretending to be in opposition, he was, in Armenian, the thing is that the constitution was tailored to his needs. But he didn't change it. He didn't change it. Not only he didn't change it, now he's talking about making even a worse version of it. So we do need a new constitution, but that comes in step number 4, and taking into account what has been done wrong. Luckily, we do have constitutional experts that already have almost something in place, and when that transitional government comes into place, they could do minor tweaks, and it could be done pretty easily. So it's not like we have to start from scratch. We don't need a Thomas Jefferson at this point. Number 5, special elections based on new laws regarding political parties and electoral law. Because as we know, we have, with the exception of maybe the very first elections in '91, we've never had free and fair elections. They may have been free, but for sure they haven't been fair. Because I know a lot of people say, well, this last one was democratic, Nicol got 50-something%, but when you have the entire media at your disposal and you start campaigning before you even announce that there's going to be an election, and the other parties have less than 20 days to strategize, raise funds, and campaign, that's far from fair.
Right.
So those are the points. Like I said, if you go to the website, there's much more detail. I asked that the viewer that not just to take my word for it, because I'm nobody to them, but familiarize yourself. If you don't like it, then move on. Suggest to them. The NDA's doors are always open, whether their main office on the corner of Sayat Nova and Alek Manukyan, where the radio house is, which Nicole illegally broke in 2018. By the way, to go off on a tangent, what Nicole did in 2018, breaking into that radio office, was by law, by Armenian law, a larger crime than what the Sasnadzere, if we call it a crime, than what the Sasnadzere did in 2016. Because his entering public radio space is punishable by death. So a police officer at that point had the right to kill Nikol Pashinyan for breaking down that door. But not only kill, they just let him do it. So as a side note, so they can go to the main office on Sayat Nova and Alek Manukyan, and they can also go to Freedom Square 24 hours a day. There is a makeshift tent set up because they're not allowed to put up an official tent, and you can ask questions, familiarize yourself, get to know the person, ask questions, give suggestions.
And for those who do not know, Freedom Square is actually Opera Square.
Is actually Opera Square, correct? Is actually right. Opera Square, which is a nice synergy between one of our greatest architectural and cultural centers of Yerevan, and equally our political centers, because as we know, in 1988, the Artsakh movement in Yerevan started from there. And it's not coincidence they call it Freedom Square, independence. So to get independence, you have to start at Independence Square. Give suggestions. They will, whether it's one of the council members there or one of the supporters, exchange ideas. They're not perfect beings. Everybody's imperfect. Maybe somebody would come along, but at the least, exchange ideas with something that is already established, not start from scratch when there is no need to. And we can see where that takes us. So I would tell our people to just take even a little bit of time just to, I won't even say educate themselves, inform themselves and say, are these trustworthy people? And the other thing that we have to get out of our minds is that, let's say it's National Democratic Alliance. They are not saviors. They are not infinite in their wisdom nor in their power. Because they say, well, how do I know they won't be the same? I said, we don't know. I don't know either. But we can't think like that. If they're bad, then the following one, we get rid of them and we put someone else in place. We can't expect that someone is going to come and then we're going to be in paradise for the next millennium. It can easily change. But the thing is, we have to hold those, whoever it comes into power next, hold those people accountable. We never held Nicole or anybody accountable. When Nicole came in and he said, Artsakh is Armenia, we didn't hold him accountable. When he said we're going to do vetting of the judges, I don't know if anybody remembers that, because he was complaining that the judges, he said they need to be vetted. They were never vetted. Not one single one of his promises were upheld. Which is fine. A lot of politicians lie everywhere, even in the West. However, the difference is we hold them accountable. And if they continue not to do so, we vote them out the next time. Not only did he lie, we didn't keep him accountable, and we kept him there again the next time. He had a complete capitalization, and we kept him there again, which is unheard of. Even if he was the best, most honest, most accomplished leader, just the fact that he signed a complete and absolute capitulation, he should have been out the next door, whether in a pine box or on his own 2 feet. He should have been out the next day.
So now that you're in Yerevan, by the way, how are we doing on time?
We have 8 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So before we end the show, I just want to get a sense of what's going on in Yerevan, in Armenia in general. Because we were both there this summer, and we have an idea of what things were like. Um, you know, I yeah, I always felt that there was a general sense of disillusionment and apathy, uh, especially regarding the so-called revolution. Um, and people were just they felt betrayed. Um, how is that changing? Is that manifesting into something else? Is the NDA getting more support? Are you noticing uh, more supporters or fewer supporters? What's the situation in that regards?
Well, winter plays a part. It's cold, people are at home, so as far as on the streets, it may not be as visible, even though, and this is important to mention, the youth faction of the NDA has organized several protests in different locations. So one was against the um, Science, Education, Culture, and Sport Ministry, of whom the leader is the woman that said, called Garegin Nejde a fascist. And I don't care who you are, what side you lean on as an Armenian, that those are curse words. You might as well insult someone's mother to say Garegin Nejde was a fascist and we shouldn't teach extremism and that's detrimental to us. So there was a protest in front of her ministry. There was also a protest in front of the border guards who are Russian, whose main branch is also in Yerevan. There was also a wreath laying ceremony at Mashtot's Park, which was renamed Misak Manusyan Park. As we know, the government of France, on the 80th anniversary of Misak Manusyan's death, had a reburial ceremony at the highest levels. So NDA was the only one to even address that. On February 18th, during our uprising day, Armenians being the only people to fight against Bolshevism and, albeit for a short period of time, threw out the Bolsheviks from Armenia. This is after December of 20, when the 11th Red Army entered Armenia. And on March 2nd, there will be another protest also organized by the youth at Zvartnots, because also our border guards over there are Russian, which is also unheard of. I don't know of any other nation that has another nationality and an enemy nationality at that, protecting their borders. So on March 2nd, there will be another one. So I would also ask our viewers, if you are in Yerevan, if you're a resident of Yerevan, or if you happen to be Yerevan, please attend those and show your force. So, it's funny, some say, oh, there's only 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people. Yes, but even if it's 1,000, it's 1,000 more than any other political force out there doing anything. Sure, every once in a while, the Dashnags and the Kocharyans and the Vazgen Manugyans, or I forget the guy that dresses like a doorman, the ex-ambassador to Poland, they'll pop up and hold a quick rally and then disappear for months because they get their orders from Moscow. Continuously for months and years and decades, it's the National Democratic Alliance that has been on the ground, that has been saying Artsakh is part of Armenia, that has been saying our legal, historical, and lawful rights are to our first republic. It is also National Democratic Alliance that's saying the November 9th announcement, people call it a treaty or it's an announcement that should be ripped up. It is only them that are saying that. If anybody believes in those three things, let's work together by all means. I think I spoke
Right.
a lot, Martin. We have a little over 3 minutes. Maybe you can sum up.
Well, again, I can't stress this more than enough that the National Democratic Alliance is working for the Armenian people, but it needs support. It needs, it's great that if you subscribe to the page and like the page and all of that, but monetary support is also needed. So contributions are always more than welcome, regardless of how large or small they may be. So please bear that in mind. If you want to see real democratic change in Armenia, you need to support this cause, not only in spirit but financially. It just, this is important. We need to get that
Everything
message
costs
out.
money.
It does. And regardless of how many hours you or I may volunteer and do this, it's still going to require a big effort and vast support from the Armenian people. So again, I encourage our viewers to not only subscribe and like and share these videos, but also contribute to their ability. So that's pretty much it. Gokor, thank you for connecting with us today, live from Yerevan. And if you want to sum up with a few
Well,
words.
I think I spoke mostly, but I want to reiterate that this government is so non-Armenian that one of our greatest moments in history in the past century, the February 18th uprising, when we told the Bolsheviks, this is our land, get the hell out. And of course, it had severe repercussions. Not one mention, forget about Nikol, none of the parties. It was only the NDA that had the decency to at least honor those victims and honor those men and women who fought at that time to establish a free Armenia during the early days of the Soviet Union. And then same thing with Misak Manusyan. The Great Republic of France held the highest burial orders. I think the last ones like that was for Charles Aznavour and their actor Jean-Paul Belmondo. And here we had an Armenian that was held at that high level, whom Nikol was invited to attend. And he kind of was forced to attend. But upon returning to Armenia, not a single mention, not a single flower was laid for him. So we know who the enemy is. Let's focus on how to do the right thing, get rid of the enemy, and establish the Armenia that we all know, that we all deserve.
Great. Well, thank you, Gokor, and thanks to our listeners. This has been Armenian-American Perspective, and we'll be seeing you again in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.